Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
We're thrilled you've joined us today and truly appreciate your support. We're curious. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Architect. Miles Donovan had built his fortune from the ground up, brick by painstaking brick. At 47, he possessed the kind of wealth that allowed him to create intricate financial structures that even the most seasoned Wall Street veterans struggled to comprehend. It wasn't about tax evasion, it was about protection. A lesson his father, a once prosperous contractor who lost everything in a messy divorce, had impressed upon him before drinking himself to death when Miles was only 16. Never put anything in your own name, son, his father had slurred that final night. Not if you want to keep it. Miles had taken that advice and elevated it to an art form. His primary residence, a restored Victorian mansion on 3 acres just outside Boston, was owned by the Donovan Family Trust, which was in turn controlled by Hermes Holdings, an entity registered in the Cayman Islands. Miles maintained ironclad control of Hermes through a complex web of shell companies and proxy directors. To the outside world, he was merely a successful real estate developer. Only his attorney, Floyd Newman, knew the true extent of his financial empire. The irony wasn't lost on Miles. He had designed his financial labyrinth to protect himself from the government, competitors, and lawsuit-happy clients. He never imagined it would one day protect him from his own wife. Vivian had entered his life like a hurricane 6 years ago. He had been 41, she 28. They met at a charity gala, where she was working as an event coordinator. Unlike the society women who typically circled him, Vivian wasn't impressed by his wealth. Or at least, she was skilled at pretending not to be. Another real estate developer, she'd said with a smirk when he introduced himself. How original. Her dismissiveness had been intoxicating. The chase that followed, dinner invitations repeatedly declined, flowers returned, had only intensified his desire. When she finally agreed to a date 3 months later, Miles was already half in love with her. The marriage proposal came 6 months after that. Miles had offered a prenuptial agreement. His attorney insisted, but didn't press the issue when Vivian tearfully expressed how it made her feel like just another business transaction. He had been a fool, blinded by her dark copper hair and cynical smile, but not enough of a fool to put her name on any of his assets. As Miles stared out the window of his private jet returning from Singapore, he scrolled through the surveillance footage on his tablet. The camera hidden in their bedroom light fixture captured it all. Vivian and her lover, Deacon Mercer, the personal trainer she'd hired last year. Miles had suspected for months. The late-night texts, the sudden interest in fitness, the declining of his invitations to join him on business trips, a stark contrast to the early years when she would eagerly accompany him around the world. His suspicions had led him to have Floyd hire a private security firm. They installed hidden cameras throughout the house during a weekend when he took Vivian to New York, supposedly for their anniversary. That was 3 months ago. Miles had been collecting evidence ever since, waiting for the right moment. It wasn't just about the affair. 2 weeks ago, his security team intercepted a series of encrypted messages between Vivian and Deacon. They were planning something that involved Miles' extended trip to Singapore. Mr. Donovan will be landing in Boston in approximately 20 minutes. The pilot's voice interrupted his thoughts. Miles nodded to himself and closed the video feed. He opened another app on his tablet, a secure communication channel to Floyd. "Is everything in place?" he typed. The response came seconds later. "All set. Team standing by. Just say the word." Miles closed his eyes and took a deep breath. 6 years of marriage. 6 years that now seemed like an elaborate con. Well, Vivian was about to discover that she had chosen the wrong man to deceive. "Execute," he typed back to Floyd. Then he powered down his tablet and prepared for landing. Chapter 2. The Conspiracy. 3 months earlier, Vivian Donovan sat across from Deacon Mercer at a quiet table in the back of Whisper Lounge, a dimly lit bar on the outskirts of Boston. They'd been careful, separate arrivals, no physical contact in public, cash payments only. Vivian wore large sunglasses despite the evening hour and had tucked her distinctive copper hair under a black baseball cap. "He's planning another trip," she said quietly, swirling the ice in her vodka tonic. "Singapore. At least 2 weeks, possibly 3. Deacon nodded, his face betraying no emotion. At 35, he had the chiseled physique expected of a personal trainer, but his eyes held a calculating intelligence that had initially attracted Vivian. He wasn't just another pretty face with impressive muscles. He had ambition. "Is everything documented like we discussed?" he asked. Vivian nodded. "The lawyers confirmed it. In Massachusetts, if I can prove abandonment and emotional neglect, I can petition for temporary exclusive use of the residence during divorce proceedings. Miles has gone at least 20 days each month. I've been documenting every trip for the past year." What Vivian didn't mention was that it had been Deacon's idea to pursue this strategy. 6 months into their affair, he had casually asked about her financial arrangements with Miles. When she admitted there was no prenuptial agreement, his eyes had lit up with interest. "You realize what that means, right?" he had said. "Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state. Without a prenup, you're entitled to a significant portion of everything acquired during the marriage." From that moment, their relationship had taken on an additional dimension. Lovers, yes, but also conspirators. Deacon had introduced her to Lorna Fitzgerald, a divorce attorney known for her aggressive tactics against wealthy husbands. "What about the deed to the house?" Deacon asked now, keeping his voice low. "Any progress there?" Vivian frowned. "That's the problem. I can't find a copy anywhere in the house. I've searched his home office multiple times. According to public records, the house is owned by something called the Donovan Family Trust. And who controls the trust? I don't know. Miles keeps all his business dealings separate from our personal life. He's secretive." Deacon's jaw tightened briefly. This was a complication. "What about his assistant? Patrice? Could you get information from her?" Vivian shook her head. "Patrice is completely loyal to Miles. She barely acknowledges my existence when I call his office. We need that information, Viv. Without understanding his financial structure, we're fighting blind." What neither of them knew was that Miles had begun suspecting Vivian's infidelity months ago. The first clue had been a misdirected text message that appeared on his iPad through their shared Apple account. A message clearly not meant for him, though it had been quickly deleted. Then there was the lingering scent of unfamiliar cologne in their bedroom, noticed when he returned unexpectedly early from a trip to Chicago. Miles had not confronted her. Instead, he began his own documentation, quiet modifications to his financial structures, digital surveillance, and background checks on anyone new in Vivian's life, including her suspiciously overqualified personal trainer with a last name that had been changed from Mercado to Mercer 5 years ago. Back at the Whisper Lounge, Vivian leaned forward. "I have another approach. Miles' attorney, Floyd Newman, handles everything. His office would have copies of all the legal documents. Can you get access?" "Not directly, but..." Vivian smiled slightly. "Floyd's assistant, Bethany, has always been friendly to me. I've been cultivating that relationship." She mentioned that Floyd is going on vacation next week. "The Galapagos. Limited internet access." Deacon raised an eyebrow, impressed. "So, while the cat's away..." "Exactly. I'm taking Bethany to lunch tomorrow. I think with the right incentive, she might be willing to help us get copies of some key documents." What Vivian couldn't have known was that Bethany Palmer had worked for Floyd Newman for 15 years. Her friendliness was professional courtesy, nothing more. And her mention of Floyd's upcoming vacation was a deliberate piece of misinformation, part of a counterintelligence strategy developed after Miles first voiced his suspicions to Floyd. Bethany had immediately reported Vivian's lunch invitation to Floyd, who had instructed her to accept and feed Vivian carefully curated information. Every detail would be reported back to Miles. Meanwhile, Miles had authorized the installation of state-of-the-art surveillance equipment throughout their home. Every conversation, every visitor, every search through his papers was captured and analyzed. He watched as Vivian and Deacon's conspiracy unfolded, always 2 steps ahead of their planning. As Vivian and Deacon finished their drinks and prepared to leave separately, Deacon reached across the table and briefly squeezed her hand. "Once we have control of the house, everything else will fall into place," he assured her. Miles will be negotiating from a position of weakness. Trust me. Vivian nodded, her expression determined. 2 more months. Then we make our move during the Singapore trip. Neither of them noticed the man sitting at the bar, apparently focused on a basketball game on the television. Harold Vincetti, retired Boston police detective and current employee of Sentinel Security Services, had been tracking their movements for weeks. As they left, he finished his club soda, left a generous tip, and made a phone call. Sir, they're still planning to move during the Singapore trip. We got all on audio. On the other end of the line, Floyd Newman smiled. Excellent. Send me the recording. Mr. Donovan will want to hear this personally. Chapter 3. The Deception. The Singapore business trip was supposed to last 3 weeks, but Miles Donovan had completed his negotiations in just 12 days. The development rights for the luxury condominium project in Singapore's Marina Bay area were secured, contracts signed, and local partners appeased. It was a substantial win for Donovan Development, adding another jewel to his international portfolio. Under normal circumstances, Miles would have extended his stay to explore investment opportunities in neighboring Malaysia or perhaps enjoy a few days of relaxation at the Raffles Hotel, where he maintained a permanent suite. But these are not normal circumstances. In his hotel room, Miles conducted a video call with Floyd Newman and Harold Vincetti from Sentinel Security. They've accelerated their timeline, Harold explained, his weathered face filling a portion of the screen. According to our surveillance, they're bringing in the security team tomorrow morning. For men from Bastion Security Services. Bastion? Miles raised an eyebrow. That's Deacon's brother's company. Correct, Floyd confirmed. We've looked into it. Bastion is owned by Travis Mercado. Deacon still uses his birth name in business dealings with his brother. They primarily provide nightclub bouncers and event security, but they're branching into executive protection services. Miles nodded thoughtfully. So Vivian gets to claim she feared for her safety because of my erratic behavior. And, conveniently, her lover's brother provides the muscle to keep me out of my own house. That appears to be the plan, Harold agreed. They've been careful to create a paper trail. Vivian has been making calls to a domestic violence hotline from your landline. She's visited the emergency room twice in the past month, complaining of anxiety and insomnia, which she attributed to fear of your unpredictable temper. Miles' expression darkened. I've never raised my voice to her, let alone my hand. We know that, sir, Harold said. But she's building a narrative. She's also been transferring small amounts from your joint account to a private account over the past 6 months. Small enough not to trigger any alerts, but it adds up to about $250,000. The joint account has a $500,000 limit, Miles said dismissively. It's replenished monthly for household expenses. She's welcome to it. Floyd cleared his throat. There's more, Miles. Bethany reports that Vivian tried to bribe her for information about your financial holdings. Offered her $50,000 in cash to provide copies of trust documents and offshore account details. Miles leaned back in his chair, a faint smile touching his lips. And what did our loyal Bethany do? Provided her with exactly what we wanted her to have. The altered documents showing that the house is owned directly by Hermes Holdings, with no mention of the intervening trusts or the fact that you personally control Hermes through proxy directors. Perfect, Miles nodded. And our countermeasures? Harold took over again. Our team will remain in position, but unseen. We have 4 operators stationed in the guest house, monitoring the security feeds. Once Bastion's team is in place, we'll make contact with them privately. As discussed, we'll present the authentic ownership documents and offer them double whatever Vivian is paying. And if they refuse? They won't, Harold said confidently. I've researched Travis Mercado. He's ambitious, but practical. When he understands that his security license could be revoked for participating in an illegal lockout, he'll make the business decision. Miles nodded again, satisfied. I'll be arriving on flight SQ-26, landing at 7:15 p.m. tomorrow. Keep me updated on any developments. After ending the call, Miles stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows of his suite, gazing out at the Singapore skyline. The Marina Bay Sands complex dominated the view, its 3 towers supporting the famous Sky Park, a feat of engineering and audacity. Miles appreciated audacity. In fact, A part of him admired Vivian's boldness. It was a quality that had attracted him to her initially. But he had no tolerance for betrayal. His phone chimed with a text message from Vivian. "Miss you. When are you coming home?" The corners of his mouth lifted in a cold smile as he typed his response. "Negotiations wrapping up early. Should be home tomorrow evening. Can't wait to see you." He could almost picture her panic as she read his message. The frantic call to Deacon, the rushed adjustment of their plans. They would need to move quickly now, bringing in the security team immediately rather than tomorrow morning. Miles sent another text to Floyd. "Green light. They'll move tonight." Floyd's response was immediate. "Team in position. All contingencies covered." Miles turned back to the Singapore skyline, his reflection superimposed over the glittering cityscape. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "Never put anything in your own name, son. Not if you want to keep it." He had built his financial fortress to protect against business risks, never imagining it would serve as a bulwark against marital betrayal. Yet here he was, about to witness the effectiveness of his creation from a new angle. Miles poured himself 2 fingers of Macallan 25, raised the glass in a silent toast to his late father, and began packing for his journey home. Chapter 4. The Confrontation. The private jet touched down at Boston Logan International Airport at 6:43 p.m., 32 minutes ahead of schedule. Miles had slept for most of the 14-hour flight, a skill he'd perfected over years of international business travel. He looked refreshed in his tailored charcoal suit as he descended the steps to the tarmac, where a black Escalade waited. "Welcome back, Mr. Donovan," said Roland, his longtime driver. "Straight home?" "Yes, Roland," Miles replied, sliding into the leatherback seat. "And take the route past Brewer's Pond, would you? I could use the extra few minutes." "Of course, sir." As the Escalade pulled away, Miles checked his phone. 3 text messages from Floyd with updates. Bastion team arrived at 9 a.m. From men, led by Travis Mercado personally. Vivian presented altered documents to them claiming full ownership. "Our team made contact at 2 p.m. Travis agreed to our terms immediately." Miles smiled slightly. The final message had arrived just 30 minutes ago. "All assets in position, waiting for your arrival to execute final phase." He put his phone away and gazed out the window as the Escalade wound through the affluent suburbs west of Boston. Twilight was settling over the landscape, lights beginning to twinkle in the windows of the stately homes they passed. "Any specific music, sir?" Roland asked. "Wagner, I think. Ride of the Valkyries would be appropriate." As the powerful orchestral piece filled the vehicle, Miles closed his eyes briefly, centering himself for the confrontation to come. When he opened them again, they were turning onto the long, tree-lined drive leading to his estate. The house came into view, a magnificent Victorian restoration with modern additions that preserved its historic character while providing contemporary luxury. Lights blazed from every window, and 4 large men in black uniforms stood at attention near the front entrance. Bastion security, no doubt. The Escalade stopped at the bottom of the circular driveway, just inside the gate. Miles stepped out, straightening his suit jacket. "Wait here, Roland. This shouldn't take long." As Miles approached, the security team moved to form a human barrier in front of the door. The tallest among them, a muscular man with a military-style buzz cut, stepped forward. "I'm sorry, sir, but you can't come any further. This is private property." Miles smiled pleasantly. "I'm well aware. It's my private property. I have documentation stating otherwise, sir," the man replied stiffly. "This residence belongs to Mrs. Vivian Donovan, and she has requested that you not be permitted entry." At that moment, the front door opened and Vivian emerged. She was dressed impeccably in a black cocktail dress that Miles recognized. He had purchased it for her in Milan the previous year. Her copper hair was styled in loose waves, and her makeup was flawless. She looked like she was attending a gallery opening rather than orchestrating a marital coup. "Miles," she said, her voice carrying across the distance between them. "You're back early." "Evidently," Miles replied, his tone conversational. "I see you've been busy in my absence." "This isn't your house anymore," Vivian declared, her voice taking on a harder edge. "I've filed for divorce, and secured a temporary order for exclusive use of the marital residence, effective immediately. You can collect your personal belongings tomorrow, supervised, between 10 a.m. and noon. Miles made a show of looking around at the security team. And these gentlemen are here to enforce this supposed order. They're here to ensure my safety, Vivian replied. Given your history of intimidation. Miles chuckled softly. That's quite creative, Vivian. Completely fictional, but creative. He turned to the lead security officer. You must be Travis Mercado, Deacon's brother, correct? The man's expression betrayed a flicker of surprise before returning to professional neutrality. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. Actually, Travis, Miles countered, I think we should all go inside and discuss this situation like civilized people. Don't you agree? Vivian's voice rose in alarm. Don't let him in. I have the documents. The house belongs to Hermes Holdings, and I have legal authorization to occupy it during our divorce proceedings. Miles nodded. Hermes Holdings. Yes, that's correct. He reached into his inner suit pocket and withdrew a slim leather portfolio. Speaking of documentation, Travis, I believe you've already seen these papers? Travis Mercado's expression remained impassive, but a bead of sweat had formed on his temple despite the cool evening air. What papers? Vivian demanded, starting down the steps toward them. Miles opened the portfolio and handed several documents to Travis, who accepted them with obvious reluctance. These are the authentic ownership records for this property, Miles explained, his voice carrying clearly in the evening air. The house is indeed owned by Hermes Holdings, which in turn is owned by the Donovan Family Trust. And as these documents demonstrate conclusively, I am the sole controlling trustee of both entities. Vivian froze halfway down the steps, her confident expression faltering. That's not possible. Hermes Holdings is an offshore company based in the Cayman Islands. Indeed it is, Miles agreed pleasantly. Established by me in 2008, long before we met. The documents you presented to Mr. Mercado earlier today were, shall we say, incomplete. The actual corporate structure is a bit more complex. Miles turned back to Travis. As I believe my security consultant explained to you this afternoon, continuing to prevent me from entering my own property constitutes criminal trespass and could jeopardize your company's security license in Massachusetts. Not to mention potential civil liability. Travis Mercado cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mrs. Donovan, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. The documentation you provided earlier was insufficient. What? Vivian spat, her composure cracking. You're working for me. I paid you in advance. About that, Miles interjected smoothly. Mr. Mercado and his team have agreed to a change in employment. He nodded toward the gate, where 4 men in dark suits had emerged from unmarked vehicles. My own security team from Sentinel Services will be taking over the protection of the property. Protection from unauthorized occupants. That is, Travis stepped aside, motioning for his team to do the same. Mrs. Donovan, I apologize, but we cannot continue this assignment. Your retainer will be refunded in full. Vivian stood frozen on the steps, her face a mask of disbelief that rapidly transformed into fury. You can't do this. I have a court order. Based on fraudulent claims, Miles countered, ascending the steps. Floyd has already filed an emergency motion to vacate, supported by extensive evidence of your affair with Deacon Mercer and your conspiracy to illegally seize control of property that is demonstrably not part of our marital assets. He reached the top of the steps where Vivian stood, meeting her gaze directly for the first time. Up close, he could see the panic behind her eyes. You're locked out, Miles said softly, echoing the words she had planned to say to him. This is my house now. He smiled coldly. Actually, it always was. Miles, please. Vivian's tone suddenly shifted to pleading. We can talk about this. You don't understand. Understand perfectly, Miles interrupted. You and Deacon have been planning this for months. The emergency room visits, the calls to domestic violence hotlines, the systematic withdrawals from our joint account. It was quite thorough. Vivian's eyes widened. How did you? No. Miles finished for her. I've known about your affair since it began. Every conversation, every plan, every attempt to access my financial records. It's all documented. From inside the house came the sound of raised voices. Moments later, Deacon Mercer was escorted out the front door by two of the Sentinel security officers, looking disheveled and furious. "Travis, what the hell?" Deacon demanded, seeing his brother standing with Miles' team. "Sorry, Deacon," Travis replied stiffly. "Business decision." Miles turned to the Sentinel team leader. "Please escort Mrs. Donovan and Mr. Mercer off the property. They can take one vehicle and any personal items they're currently carrying. Everything else can be arranged through our attorneys." "Miles, you can't just throw me out," Vivian protested, her voice rising hysterically. "Half of everything is mine by law. Half of our marital assets," Miles corrected her. "This house, as you've just learned, is not a marital asset. Neither are most of my business holdings. But we can discuss the division of our IKEA dishware and the Target betting if you'd like." The security team moved forward, flanking Vivian and Deacon. "This isn't over," Deacon snarled. Miles regarded him with cold amusement. "Mr. Mercer, or should I say, Mr. Mercado, for you, it's very much over. Now, please leave my property before I decide to press charges for breaking and entering." As Vivian and Deacon were escorted to her BMW, Miles turned and entered his home. The massive oak door closed behind him with a satisfying thud. Inside, Floyd Newman waited in the foyer, a glass of scotch in hand. He offered it to Miles. "Congratulations," Floyd said. "Phase 1 complete, exactly as planned." Miles accepted the drink and took a sip, savoring the smoky flavor. "Arrange for the locks to be changed tonight, and schedule a deep cleaning for tomorrow." "Already done," Floyd assured him. "The locksmith will be here within the hour, and the cleaning service is booked for 8 a.m. Miles nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. What was her face like when they drove away? Floyd allowed himself a small smile. "Priceless, Miles. Absolutely priceless." Chapter 5. The Aftermath. The morning after the confrontation, Miles sat in his home office reviewing the surveillance footage from the previous night. After he had gone inside, leaving Vivian and Deacon to be escorted off the property, the cameras had captured their departure. Vivian's face was indeed a study in shock, rage, and disbelief as she was forced into the passenger seat of her own BMW, Deacon taking the wheel. Miles paused the footage, zooming in on Vivian's expression. 6 years of marriage, and he had never seen her look so authentic. The carefully maintained facade of sophistication and composure had crumbled completely, revealing the calculating opportunist beneath. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Miles called. Floyd entered, immaculately dressed, as always in a tailored navy suit, bearing a leather portfolio and a tablet. "Morning report," Floyd said, taking a seat across from Miles. "The locks have been changed. Security protocols updated. Sentinel has a 4-man team maintaining perimeter surveillance, rotating in 12-hour shifts." "Excellent," Miles nodded. "Any contact from Vivian or Deacon?" Vivian tried to return at midnight with 2 Boston police officers, claiming domestic violence and illegal eviction. Officers Ramirez and Talbot, both reasonable men. I showed them the property documentation and explained that Mrs. Donovan had attempted to fraudulently seize control of the residence. They advised her to pursue the matter through civil courts. Miles smiled slightly. "Where did they go after leaving here?" "According to our surveillance, they spent the night at the Four Seasons downtown. Room charged to your American Express, naturally." "Of course," Miles said dryly. "Cancel that card. In fact, cancel all cards where she's an authorized user." Floyd made a note on his tablet. "Already done. Also, as instructed, I've had her removed as a beneficiary from your life insurance policies and retirement accounts." "And the joint accounts?" "Frozen as of 9 a.m., Floyd confirmed. "She attempted to withdraw $50,000 from your joint checking account at 8:47 this morning. Request denied." Miles nodded thoughtfully. "She must be getting desperate. What about legal movements?" "Her attorney, Lorna Fitzgerald, filed an emergency motion this morning for temporary spousal support and access to marital funds. Judge Harriman denied it pending a full hearing next week." We've submitted our counterclaims, including the surveillance evidence of the affair and conspiracy. Speaking of evidence, Miles said, "What's the status on Deacon Mercer, or Mercado, rather?" Floyd's expression took on a satisfied quality. "This is where it gets interesting. Our investigators have been thorough. Deacon changed his name from Mercado to Mercer 5 years ago, shortly after being released from the Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles. Prison." Miles raised an eyebrow. "What for?" "Investment fraud. He posed as a wealth management consultant and siphoned nearly $2 million from clients before being caught. Served 18 months of a 3-year sentence." Miles leaned back in his chair, processing this information. "And Vivian knew this?" "Unknown," Floyd replied. "But there's more. Since his release, he's established a pattern. 3 relationships with wealthy, married women in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Chicago. Each followed the same trajectory. He's hired as a personal trainer, initiates an affair, and eventually encourages the woman to seek divorce. In the Chicago case, he actually married the woman after her divorce was finalized. That marriage lasted 8 months, during which he transferred nearly $600,000 from their joint accounts to offshore holdings. A professional, Miles mused. And his brother's security company? Legitimate, as far as we can tell. Travis appears to have distanced himself from Deacon's criminal activities. The company primarily provides bouncers to nightclubs and event security. The Executive Protection Division was only established 6 months ago, around the time Deacon and Vivian began planning their coup, Miles noted. Floyd nodded. It appears Deacon was planning to use this situation to help his brother expand into a new market segment. Family business, Miles said with a hint of irony. What's next from their side? Based on precedent from his previous patterns, Deacon will likely encourage Vivian to pursue aggressive legal action while simultaneously planning an exit strategy. Once he determines that the potential financial gain doesn't justify the effort, he typically disappears. Miles stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the meticulously maintained grounds. The gardeners were pruning the hedges that lined the eastern perimeter of the property. "He won't disappear this time," Miles said quietly. "Neither of them will." Floyd studied his client carefully. "What are you thinking, Miles?" Miles turned, his expression calm but determined. "Phase 2. It's time to dismantle Mr. Mercado's operation permanently and ensure that Vivian understands the full consequences of her choices." The private investigator has compiled extensive documentation on Deacon's previous frauds, Floyd offered, including victims who never reported to authorities. "We could anonymously provide this information to current victims' spouses, law enforcement in multiple jurisdictions, and financial regulators." "Do it," Miles decided. "But that's just the beginning. I want financial pressure applied immediately. Contact the Four Seasons and any other high-end hotels in Boston. Make it known that neither Vivian nor Deacon are authorized to charge anything to any of my accounts or business entities. They'll need to find alternative accommodations quickly," Floyd observed. "Precisely. Where's Vivian's family these days?" "Her mother was in Arizona, as I recall." "Phoenix," Floyd confirmed. "Retirement community. Vivian's sister Lorraine is in Seattle with 3 children. Neither has significant financial resources." Miles nodded. "Vivian hasn't spoken to her mother in years. Some disagreement over her first marriage. She won't go there. The sister is a possibility, but Vivian would consider it humiliating to show up destitute on Lorraine's doorstep. That leaves Deacon's resources," Floyd noted, "which I suspect are more limited than he's led Vivian to believe," Miles said. "His type keeps just enough liquid assets for appearances. The rest is either tied up in illiquid investments or doesn't exist at all." A notification chimed on Floyd's tablet. He glanced down, then looked up at Miles with raised eyebrows. "It appears Vivian has just retained new counsel. She's dropped Lorna Fitzgerald and hired Garrett Osborne." Miles gave a low whistle. "Osborne doesn't come cheap. Starting retainer is $75,000, if memory serves." "Correct," Floyd confirmed. "Which raises the question, where did she get that kind of money on short notice with her access to your accounts cut off?" "Maybe Deacon is better funded than we thought," Miles mused. "Or perhaps Vivian had a rainy day fund I wasn't aware of." Either way, Osborne is formidable. This is escalating faster than anticipated. Should we adjust our strategy? Floyd asked. Miles considered for a moment, then shook his head. No. If anything, this confirms we're on the right track. Vivian's fighting back harder than I expected, which means she believes there's still something worth fighting for. The divorce settlement, Floyd nodded. Even without the house, Massachusetts law entitles her to a significant portion of assets acquired during the marriage. Assets in my name, Miles clarified, which, as you know, are minimal compared to the holdings of my various corporate entities. He returned to his desk and sat down. Still, she could potentially claim a portion of Donovan Development's increase in value during our marriage. We need to neutralize that angle. Floyd hesitated. There is one option we discussed previously, but you were reluctant to pursue it. Miles met his attorney's gaze. The offshore restructuring. Yes, Floyd confirmed. If executed properly, it would render most of your assets unreachable in a divorce proceeding. The downside is that it would trigger certain reporting requirements and potentially attract regulatory attention. I've always operated within the law, Floyd, Miles reminded him. Complex, yes. Aggressive in tax planning, certainly. But legal. The restructuring would remain legal, Floyd assured him. But it would put you on the radar of agencies that have previously paid little attention to your holdings. Miles tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the desk. What's the timeline? For full implementation? 3 to 4 weeks. But we could begin the process immediately and establish the foundational structure within days. Do it, Miles decided. Full implementation before the first court hearing. I want Vivian to understand that every day she continues this fight, there will be less and less left to fight for. Floyd made a note on his tablet. And the personal items she left behind? Her clothing, jewelry, personal effects? She'll likely file a motion for access. Have everything packed by a professional service, Miles instructed. Inventory every item in the presence of a neutral third party. Store it all in a secure facility under Sentinel supervision. She can access it through proper legal channels. Very thorough, Floyd observed. I learned from my father's mistakes, Miles said quietly. He trusted his wife. He didn't document anything. When she decided she wanted out, she took everything, including his dignity. Floyd nodded, understanding the personal dimension that drove his client's meticulous approach. If I may ask, what's your endgame here, Miles? What do you want when this is all over? Miles leaned back in his chair, his expression hardening. I want them to understand that actions have consequences. Vivian chose to betray me. Deacon chose to target me. Both thought I would be an easy mark. The busy, absent husband who could be manipulated and discarded. They need to learn how profoundly they misjudged the situation. And financially, I don't care about the money, Floyd. I can always make more. This is about principle. Vivian will receive exactly what the law requires. No more, no less. And it will be considerably less than she's expecting. Floyd closed his tablet and stood. I'll set everything in motion. The offshore restructuring team is standing by. We'll have initial papers for your signature by this evening. Good, Miles nodded. And Floyd? I want daily surveillance reports on both of them. Every move, every conversation, every transaction. No detail is too small. After Floyd left, Miles turned back to the frozen image on his computer screen. Vivian's face contorted with rage and disbelief as she was escorted off the property. He studied it for a long moment, searching for any flicker of the woman he had thought he married. There was nothing familiar there. Perhaps there never had been. Miles closed the file and opened his email. Dozens of business matters required his attention after 2 weeks abroad. Life continued. Empire building continued. And so did his carefully orchestrated dismantling of the two people who had thought they could take it all away. Chapter 6. The Strategy. 1 week after the confrontation at the mansion, Vivian and Deacon sat in a modest suite at the residence in Cambridge. It wasn't the Four Seasons. Those doors had closed to them along with every other luxury hotel in Boston once Miles made his influence known. The sleek modern furnishings and adequate kitchenette were a far cry from the sumptuous surroundings Vivian had grown accustomed to over the past 6 years. This is ridiculous, Vivian fumed, pacing the limited floor space. She was dressed in new clothes, mid-range brands from Nordstrom, not the designer pieces she'd left behind at the mansion. I'm entitled to half of everything, Deacon. Everything. Massachusetts law is clear on this. Deacon sat at the small dining table, his laptop open in front of him. His usual confident demeanor had given way to a tense vigilance over the past week. He ran a hand through his hair, which hadn't been professionally styled since the night they'd been ejected from the mansion. Garrett is working on it. Viv, he said, trying to maintain a reassuring tone. But Miles has clearly been preparing for this for months. The legal structures he's created are complex. I don't care how complex they are. We were married for 6 years. I'm entitled to my share. Deacon eyed her cautiously. He had never seen this side of Vivian, the polished socialite facade completely stripped away, revealing a hardness that both concerned and intrigued him. Garrett says Miles has initiated some kind of offshore restructuring, Deacon explained. He's moving assets beyond the reach of Massachusetts courts. Can he do that? Legally? Deacon sighed. According to Garrett, yes. The transactions themselves are legal. Morally questionable, perhaps, but legal. Many of the assets were already held in complex trust structures before your marriage. Vivian stopped pacing and fixed Deacon with an accusatory stare. You said this would work. You said with no prenup, I'd be entitled to half of everything. Half of the marital assets, Deacon corrected her carefully. But Miles has apparently been very diligent about keeping most of his wealth separate from marital assets. This is your fault, Vivian snapped. Your brilliant plan has left me homeless and cut off financially. The credit cards are canceled. The accounts are frozen. Even my damn gym membership was revoked yesterday. Deacon closed his laptop and stood, moving to intercept her pacing. He placed his hands on her shoulders, forcing her to meet his gaze. Listen to me, Viv. This is a setback, not a defeat. Miles is playing hardball, but so can we. We still have leverage. What leverage? Vivian demanded. He has the house, the money, the business, the high-priced attorneys. What do we have? A slow smile spread across Deacon's face. Information, and the threat of public exposure. Vivian frowned, not following. Exposure of what? The affair? Miles doesn't care about that. He's not running for public office. Not the affair, Deacon said. His business practices. Specifically, certain arrangements with development officials in Southeast Asia that might interest the Department of Justice. Vivian's eyes widened. Are you talking about bribes? Not bribes, Deacon corrected carefully. Consulting fees. Facilitation payments. Miles is too smart for outright bribes. But the lines get blurry in places like Vietnam and Indonesia. American prosecutors tend to take a dim view of such arrangements, regardless of what they're called locally. How do you know about this? Vivian asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. Deacon hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. I may have looked through some of his files in the home office while you were at your spa appointments. Professional curiosity. What he didn't mention was that searching for leverage in wealthy spouses' business dealings was standard procedure in his particular line of work. Before targeting any potential mark, Deacon conducted thorough research. Miles Donovan had seemed perfect, wealthy, frequently traveling, with a much younger wife who appeared increasingly dissatisfied with her marriage. You went through his files? Vivian's voice rose in disbelief. Without telling me, I was protecting you. Deacon countered smoothly. Plausible deniability. Besides, would you have wanted to know? Vivian considered this, then shook her head. No, probably not. She moved away from him, sitting on the edge of the bed. So what exactly are you suggesting? We blackmail Miles. Not blackmail, Deacon said, using the same careful tone he'd used to distinguish between bribes and consulting fees. Negotiation leverage. We don't want him prosecuted. We want a fair settlement. And you think threatening to expose his business practices will get us that? It's worth trying, Deacon said with a shrug. Miles values his reputation. A public scandal involving foreign corruption allegations would damage his business relationships, even if no charges were ever filed. Vivian was quiet for a moment, processing this new information. What if he calls our bluff? We don't actually have documents, do we? I took photos, Deacon admitted. Not comprehensive, but enough to establish a pattern. Names, dates, amounts, corporate entities that appear to exist solely to process these consulting fees. Enough to justify a closer look by federal authorities. Vivian looked at him with newfound respect, and perhaps a touch of wariness. "You've done this before, haven't you?" Before Deacon could respond, his phone buzzed with an incoming text. He glanced at it, his expression instantly darkening. "What is it?" Vivian asked. "Travis," Deacon replied, reading the message. "Bastion Security just lost their license to operate in Massachusetts. Effective immediately, pending review of fraudulent practices." "Miles," Vivian whispered. Deacon nodded grimly. "He's going after my brother now. This is getting personal." "It was always personal," Vivian corrected him. "We just didn't realize how personal until now." Deacon's phone buzzed again. Another text from Travis. "Check your email." Now, with a sense of foreboding, Deacon reopened his laptop and pulled up his email. The most recent message had no subject line, just an attachment. The sender was anonymous, but the message content was clear enough. A courtesy copy of what's being sent to authorities in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, and Boston tomorrow morning. Deacon opened the attachment. A comprehensive dossier on his activities over the past 5 years, including his name change, his prison sentence, and detailed accounts of his relationships with wealthy women in multiple cities. Financial records, photographs, hotel receipts, text message transcripts, all meticulously organized and annotated. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, scrolling through the document with growing horror. "What is it?" Vivian moved to look over his shoulder. Her gasp told him she understood the implications immediately. "He knows everything," Deacon said quietly. "Everything about me, my past, my pattern." "Your pattern?" Vivian turned to face him, her expression hardening. "What exactly does that mean, Deacon?" He closed the laptop, buying a moment to collect his thoughts. "It means Miles has been investigating me, digging into my background." "And what did he find?" Vivian's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. "What pattern, Deacon?" Deacon sighed, recognizing that further deception would only make things worse. "I've had relationships with other wealthy women going through divorces. I've helped them navigate the process." "Help them navigate the process," Vivian repeated slowly. "You mean you've done this before? Seduced unhappy wives of rich men and encouraged them to file for divorce." "It wasn't like that with us," Deacon insisted, reaching for her hand. "What we have is real." Vivian pulled her hand away. Was any of it real? Or was I just another mark in your pattern?" Before Deacon could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Travis again. "I need to take this," he said, grateful for the interruption. "It's my brother." Vivian walked to the suite's small window, staring out at the Cambridge skyline, while Deacon spoke in low, urgent tones behind her. Her mind was racing, reevaluating everything she thought she knew about her relationship with Deacon. Had it all been a calculated scheme? The initial flirtation during training sessions, the sympathetic ear when she complained about Miles' frequent absences, the gradual escalation from confidant to lover. She had believed they had a genuine connection, that Deacon saw her as more than just Miles Donovan's trophy wife. Now she wasn't sure what to believe. Damn it! Deacon's explosive exclamation pulled her from her thoughts. She turned to see him staring at his phone, his face pale. "What happened?" "Miles happened," Deacon spat. "Travis just got a call from a Massachusetts banking commission. They're auditing all of Bastion's accounts based on allegations of money laundering. His business accounts are frozen." "Can he do that?" Vivian asked incredulously. "Just make a phone call and shut down an entire business?" "Apparently, Miles Donovan can," Deacon replied bitterly. "Travis says Miles' attorney called him directly afterward, offering to resolve the misunderstanding if Travis provides a sworn statement about our plan to take over the house." Vivian sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. "He's systematically destroying everything around us. The house, the money, your brother's business. What's next?" Deacon didn't answer immediately. He was staring at his laptop, a new thought clearly troubling him. "We need to move," he said suddenly. "What? Why? If Miles has this much information about me, about us, then he knows where we're staying. He could be watching us right now. As if on cue, Deacon's phone chimed with a new email notification. He opened it cautiously. It contained only a photo, a high-resolution image taken that morning of Deacon and Vivian entering the Residence Inn, time-stamped 8:17 a.m. "We're leaving," Deacon announced, already gathering his laptop and few belongings. Now, Vivian didn't argue. She quickly packed her new, less expensive clothes into a single suitcase, while Deacon checked out remotely through the hotel's app. "Where are we going?" she asked as they prepared to leave. Deacon paused at the door, meeting her gaze directly for the first time since the revelations about his past. "First, somewhere safe. Then, we fight back." Miles thinks he's won because he has money and connections. But he's underestimating what people will do when they're cornered. Vivian studied him, seeing both the calculated manipulator revealed in Miles' dossier and the man she'd come to depend on over the past year. Whatever his initial motivations, they were in this together now. "What's the plan?" she asked simply. "We use what we have," Deacon replied. "The information about his business practices in Asia. But we don't just threaten to use it. We actually use it. Anonymous tip to the Justice Department. Copy to the SEC. Let Miles deal with federal investigators crawling through his business while we regroup." "That's not negotiation leverage anymore," Vivian pointed out. "That's scorched earth." Deacon nodded grimly. "Miles crossed a line going after my family. This isn't about money anymore. It's about survival." Vivian shouldered her bag, her resolve hardening. "Then let's survive. And make damn sure Miles doesn't." As they slipped out of the Residence Inn through a service entrance, neither noticed the unobtrusive gray sedan parked across the street. Inside, Harold Vincetti from Sentinel Security photographed their departure, noted the time, and made a phone call. "Mr. Newman? They're on the move." "Yes, sir. We'll maintain surveillance." The game of cat and mouse was entering a new phase. Miles had drawn first blood, but Deacon and Vivian were now ready to strike back with the desperation of those who had nothing left to lose. Miles, however, was far from finished with his carefully orchestrated plan. The opening moves had gone exactly as anticipated. Now it was time for the middle game, where the true complexity of his strategy would become apparent. Chapter 7. The Counter-Move. Miles Donovan sat in the understated conference room of Newman & Associates, reviewing the latest surveillance report on Vivian and Deacon. After fleeing the Residence Inn 3 days ago, they had checked into a budget hotel in Somerville under false names, paying cash. They remained there for less than 48 hours before moving again, this time to a short-term rental in Revere secured through an online marketplace. "They're burning through cash quickly," Floyd observed, seated across from Miles. "Our financial analysis suggests Vivian had approximately $120,000 in a private account we weren't previously aware of. Between Garrett Osborne's retainer, hotel expenses, and daily living costs, they've likely gone through at least half of that already." Miles nodded, unsurprised. Vivian was always careful to set something aside. "I actually respected that about her." "They've been making frequent trips to public libraries and internet cafes," Floyd continued, "using public computers rather than their own devices. They're afraid we're monitoring their electronics," Miles deduced. "Smart move, albeit too late." "Indeed. We've been able to recreate most of their online activities through our sources. They've been researching offshore corporate structures, particularly in the Cayman Islands and Singapore." Miles smiled faintly. "Looking for weaknesses in my financial armor. Any other significant movements?" Floyd hesitated briefly. "Yes. Yesterday, Deacon spent 3 hours at the Boston Public Library. He accessed the Department of Justice website, specifically pages related to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and whistleblower provisions. So they're considering that angle," Miles mused, betraying no concern. "As expected. You don't seem worried," Floyd noted carefully. "Because I'm not," Miles replied simply. "First, any allegations would be baseless. My international business dealings are complex but entirely legal. Second, even if they managed to trigger an investigation, it would be a minor inconvenience at most. And if they go public with accusations, the press might pick it up, especially given the circumstances." Miles leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. "Floyd, How long have you known me? Nearly 20 years, the attorney replied. And in those 20 years, have you ever known me to leave a significant vulnerability unaddressed? Floyd conceded the point with a slight nod. Never. Exactly. Now, what's the update on our other initiatives? Floyd consulted his tablet. The offshore restructuring is proceeding ahead of schedule. Phase 1 is complete, with the primary assets now secured within the new structure. Personal court filings show that Vivian's attorney has requested an emergency hearing regarding financial support. Judge Harriman has scheduled it for next Tuesday. And our counter motion, filed yesterday. We've requested full financial disclosure from both Vivian and Deacon, including the source of funds for Osborne's retainer, given that all known marital accounts have been frozen. Miles nodded approvingly. That should create some interesting pressure points. What about Travis Mercado? He's cooperating fully, Floyd reported. Provided a sworn affidavit regarding the scheme to take over the house, including text messages between him and his brother discussing the plan. The Banking Commission has conditionally lifted the freeze on Bastion's operational accounts, though the audit continues. Good. He made the right choice, Miles said. And our final contingency? Floyd's expression grew more serious. In place, but he hesitated. Miles, are you certain you want to proceed with that? It's extreme, even given the circumstances. It's insurance, Floyd. Something I hope we won't need to use, but essential to have in place. Miles fixed his attorney with a steady gaze. They try to take everything from me. Not just material possessions, but my home, my legacy. They need to understand that actions of that magnitude have consequences of equal measure. Before Floyd could respond, his assistant Bethany entered after a brief knock. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Newman, but there's a situation requiring immediate attention. What is it, Bethany? Floyd asked. We've just received word from our sources at the Justice Department. An anonymous complaint was filed this morning alleging violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act by Donovan Development, specifically regarding projects in Vietnam and Indonesia. Miles and Floyd exchanged looks. They've made their move, Miles said quietly. Sooner than I anticipated. Floyd turned back to Bethany. What's the current status? The complaint has been received by the FCPA unit, but no formal investigation has been opened yet. They're conducting an initial assessment. Thank you, Bethany, Floyd said. Please ask Carlton to join us immediately. After Bethany left, Miles stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the Boston skyline. They're desperate, he observed, making accusations without sufficient evidence. But potentially damaging nonetheless, Floyd cautioned. An FCPA investigation, even one that ultimately finds no wrongdoing, can create significant business disruption and reputational damage. Which is precisely why we prepared for this scenario, Miles reminded him. Activate Protocol Firebreak immediately. Floyd nodded and made a call. Carlton, it's time. Initiate Firebreak. Full spectrum, effective immediately. Miles continued staring out the window as Floyd completed the call. Protocol Firebreak was a comprehensive counterintelligence and reputation management system they had developed years ago for just such a contingency. It involved multiple components: legal response teams, media management specialists, financial communication protocols, and, most importantly, activation of carefully cultivated relationships within key regulatory agencies. Carlton confirms all elements are being activated, Floyd reported after ending the call. The DOJ response team is already preparing a detailed rebuttal to any potential allegations. Our regulatory liaisons are being briefed. Excellent, Miles said, turning back from the window. Now, let's discuss next steps. I want to increase the pressure on our friends. They've already lost the house, access to funds, and Deacon's brother's business is compromised, Floyd pointed out. What more leverage do we need? This isn't about leverage anymore, Floyd, Miles said, his voice hardening slightly. This is about consequences. They've escalated by involving federal authorities with false accusations. That crosses a line. Floyd studied his client carefully. In 20 years, he had never seen Miles truly angry. Irritated, yes. Strategically aggressive, certainly, but never consumed by personal animosity. Now, however, he detected something new in Miles' demeanor, a cold fury carefully controlled beneath his composed exterior. "What do you propose?" Floyd asked cautiously. "First, I want a full audit of Vivian's activities over the past year. Financial transactions, communications, travel, everything. She's been planning this for months, which means she's likely made mistakes. Find them." Floyd made a note. "And Deacon, we already know about his criminal past. Now I want details about his victims, the women he's manipulated before. Contact them, discreetly. See if any would be willing to come forward with their experiences." "For a criminal complaint?" Miles shook his head. "Not yet. Information gathering first. And Floyd? I want to know everything about that private account of Vivian's. Where the money came from, when it was established, whether any of it originated from our joint funds." "You're building a case for financial fraud," Floyd realized. "I'm exploring all options," Miles corrected. "They chose this battlefield. I'm simply ensuring I have the appropriate weapons." A knock at the door announced Carlton Renwick's arrival. The former Justice Department prosecutor, now a partner at a prestigious Washington law firm that specialized in FCPA cases, entered with the confident bearing of a man accustomed to high-stakes legal battles. "Miles," Carlton nodded in greeting. "Firebreak protocols have been initiated. My team is already in contact with the FCPA unit chief, a former colleague of mine. We're positioning this as a malicious complaint filed as leverage in a contentious divorce." "How are they responding?" Miles asked. "Cautiously," Carlton replied. "They're obligated to review all complaints, but the timing and anonymous nature raise red flags for them. I provided them with background on your current situation with your wife and her associate." "Good," Miles nodded. "Timeline. They'll conduct a preliminary review, which typically takes 2 to 3 weeks. However, given the circumstances and the information we've provided, I believe we can expedite a determination of insufficient basis to proceed within 7 to 10 days. "That's not fast enough," Miles said firmly. "I need this resolved before the divorce hearing on Tuesday." Carlton looked skeptical. "Miles, even with my connections, the DOJ has processes." "I understand bureaucratic constraints, Carlton," Miles interrupted. "But I also understand that where there's a will, there's a way. Find the way." Carlton and Floyd exchanged glances before Carlton nodded. "I'll do what I can, but I should note that an unusually rapid dismissal could itself raise questions." "Then ensure the dismissal is both rapid and unquestionable," Miles replied. "The complaint is baseless. The evidence of its malicious intent is clear. Make that reality apparent to your former colleagues." After Carlton left to make the necessary arrangements, Floyd turned to Miles. "There's still the matter of the hearing on Tuesday. Garrett Osborne is good. He'll come prepared to paint you as a vindictive husband using your financial resources to punish Vivian." "Let him try," Miles said dismissively. "We have surveillance evidence of her conspiracy with Deacon, sworn testimony from Travis Mercado about their scheme to seize the house, and documentation of her attempts to access confidential financial records through your assistant." "All true," Floyd acknowledged. "But Osborne will argue that surveillance of your wife without her knowledge demonstrates controlling behavior. He'll claim her actions were those of a desperate woman trying to escape an emotionally abusive relationship." Miles raised an eyebrow. "Is that your assessment of her best strategy?" "It's what I would argue in his position," Floyd admitted. "The facts aren't on their side, so they'll attack your character and methods." Miles considered this, then nodded slowly. "You're right, and that gives me an idea." He reached for his phone and made a call. "Harold? Miles Donovan. I need a special surveillance assignment." "Yes, highest priority. I want everything on Garrett Osborne. Personal habits, financial situation, potential conflicts of interest. Particularly any connection to Deacon Mercer or similar clients in the past." After ending the call, Miles noticed Floyd's concerned expression. "Don't worry, Floyd. I'm not planning to blackmail Vivian's attorney. I'm simply gathering information that might explain his unusual willingness to take this case on short notice for a client with limited financial resources. And if you find such a connection, then we'll have additional context for the judge to consider." Miles smiled thinly. "Transparency is important in legal proceedings, wouldn't you agree?" Floyd didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked, "What's your endgame here, Miles? What does victory look like to you?" Miles was quiet for a moment, considering the question carefully. Victory is Vivian understanding the full consequences of her betrayal. It's Deacon facing justice for his pattern of predatory behavior. It's restoration of what they tried to take from me. Not just material possessions, but peace of mind. The knowledge that my defenses worked. And financially, Vivian will receive exactly what the law requires. No more, no less. But she'll learn that her actions have permanently diminished what that amount would have been had she chosen a different path. Floyd nodded, making a final note on his tablet. "I'll have the team work through the weekend preparing for Tuesday's hearing. And Miles, for what it's worth, I think you're handling this remarkably well, considering the circumstances." Miles smiled faintly. "My father used to say that revenge is a dish best served cold. He was wrong about many things, but not about that." As Floyd gathered his materials to leave, Miles added one more thing. "I want to move forward with the final contingency. Make the necessary arrangements." Floyd paused, his expression troubled. "Miles, are you certain? Once initiated, it can't be easily recalled." "I'm certain," Miles replied, his voice leaving no room for further discussion. "They've shown their hand with the FCPA complaint. It's time to show them the consequences of their choices." After Floyd left, Miles remained in the conference room alone, reviewing the surveillance photos of Vivian and Deacon. 6 months ago, they had begun plotting to take everything from him. Now, they were running from hotel to hotel, their resources dwindling, their options narrowing. And Miles was just getting started. Chapter 8. The Revelation. The shabby one-bedroom apartment in Revere was a far cry from the luxury Vivian had grown accustomed to. The faded wallpaper, outdated furniture, and persistent smell of previous tenants' cooking had initially horrified her. Now, 5 days into their stay, she barely noticed the surroundings. Her focus had narrowed to survival and the increasingly desperate search for leverage against Miles. "Anything?" she asked, looking up from her laptop as Deacon entered the apartment. He had been out for hours, making calls from various public phones and meeting with potential allies. Deacon shook his head, his expression grim. "Nothing good. Our FCPA complaint was rejected by the Justice Department. Insufficient evidence to warrant a formal investigation was the official language." "How is that possible?" Vivian demanded. "You said the evidence we had was compelling." "It should have been," Deacon agreed, frustration evident in his voice. "But apparently Miles has friends in high places. My contact at the DOJ says the complaint was reviewed and dismissed in record time. Less than 4 days. That never happens." Vivian slumped back in her chair. "So Miles wins again." "Don't say that," Deacon snapped, more harshly than he'd intended. He softened his tone immediately. "We're not done yet, but we need to be realistic about our position." "Which is?" Vivian asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Deacon sat heavily on the worn couch. "Not good. Travis called while I was out. Miles' attorney offered him a deal. Full restoration of Bastion's licenses and business accounts in exchange for detailed testimony about our plan." Vivian's eyes widened. "He wouldn't." "He already did," Deacon said flatly. "Travis chose his business over family loyalty. Can't say I blame him entirely. He has employees who depend on those paychecks. So now Miles has sworn testimony about our plans," Vivian summarized. "And we have. What exactly?" Deacon didn't immediately answer. His usual confident demeanor had eroded steadily over the past week as Miles' systematic counterattacks had closed off one option after another. "We have the hearing on Tuesday," he finally said. "Garrett still believes he can secure you temporary support." "Based on what?" "Miles has moved everything offshore. The house isn't a marital asset. My access to all accounts has been cut off." Vivian ran her hands through her hair, which hadn't seen her regular stylist in almost 2 weeks. "Face it, Deacon. We're outmatched." "No," Deacon insisted, a hint of his former confidence returning. "Miles is playing hardball, but so can we. He cares about his reputation. That's a vulnerability. A vulnerability we tried to exploit with the FCPA complaint, which went nowhere," Vivian reminded him. "That was just one approach," Deacon countered. "There are others." The press, for instance. A scorned wife's story of her controlling, manipulative husband who uses his wealth to punish her for wanting freedom. That narrative has legs, especially in the current climate. Vivian considered this. You think the media would be interested? I know they would, Deacon assured her. I've already had preliminary conversations with a producer at Channel 7. They're very interested in an exclusive interview. And what would I say? That I had an affair and tried to lock my husband out of his own house. Deacon leaned forward intensely. No, you'd say you felt trapped in a controlling relationship. That Miles was often absent, emotionally unavailable. That when you sought comfort elsewhere, he reacted with disproportionate financial punishment and surveillance, using his wealth as a weapon. That's not entirely untrue, Vivian admitted slowly. Exactly. The best narratives contain elements of truth. Miles was absent. He did keep you in the dark about financial matters. He did surveil you without your knowledge. Deacon reached for her hand. This could work, Viv. It could pressure him into a more reasonable settlement offer before his reputation takes a hit. Before Vivian could respond, a sharp knock at the door startled them both. They exchanged alarmed glances. No one knew they were staying here except Travis, who certainly wouldn't be visiting after his betrayal. Are you expecting anyone? Deacon whispered. Vivian shook her head, her heart racing. Had Miles' security team found them again? The knock came again, more insistent this time. Ms. Donovan? Mr. Mercer? Boston Police Department. Please open the door. Deacon moved to the window and carefully peered out. There's a patrol car outside, he confirmed. 2 officers. What do they want? Vivian whispered anxiously. Only one way to find out, Deacon replied, moving to the door. He opened it to reveal 2 uniformed officers, a man and a woman, both with serious expressions. Deacon Mercer? The male officer asked. Yes, Deacon confirmed cautiously. I'm Officer Ramirez. This is Officer Chun. We need to speak with you and Ms. Donovan. What's this regarding? Deacon asked, not moving from the doorway. Sir, we prefer to discuss this inside, Officer Chun said firmly. Reluctantly, Deacon stepped aside to allow them entry. Vivian had risen from her chair, her arms wrapped protectively around herself. Ms. Donovan? Officer Ramirez confirmed. Yes, Vivian nodded. What's this about? We're here to inform you that Mr. Deacon Mercer is being investigated for multiple counts of fraud, including allegations of a pattern of targeting wealthy married women and encouraging them to file for divorce while systematically removing assets from joint accounts. Vivian turned to Deacon, whose face had gone pale. What? These are baseless allegations, Deacon said quickly. Obviously orchestrated by Miles Donovan as part of his campaign against Ms. Donovan. Actually, sir, Officer Chun interjected, the complaints originated from Chicago, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. 3 separate victims have come forward with remarkably similar accounts of your activities. The Massachusetts Attorney General's office has been cooperating with authorities in those jurisdictions. This is absurd, Deacon protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Officer Ramirez turned to Vivian. Ma'am, we're also here to inform you that your attorney, Garrett Osborne, has withdrawn as your counsel of record as of this morning. What? Why would he do that? Vivian demanded, her mind reeling. We're not privy to that information, Officer Chun replied, but we're required to serve you with these papers. She produced an envelope from her jacket and handed it to Vivian. This is a notice of deposition. You're being called to testify regarding Mr. Mercer's activities and your joint financial dealings over the past year. Vivian accepted the envelope with a trembling hand. Am I being charged with something? Not at this time, Officer Ramirez answered. The investigation is focused on Mr. Mercer's pattern of activity across multiple states. However, I should advise you that your involvement is being reviewed. This is Miles, Deacon said bitterly. He's behind all of this. Sir, these investigations were initiated by complaint from women in 3 different states, Officer Chun repeated. Unless you're suggesting Mr. Donovan somehow orchestrated multiple women to come forward simultaneously in different jurisdictions. That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Deacon insisted. He has resources, connections. Mr. Mercer, Officer Ramirez interrupted firmly. At this time, you are not being arrested. However, you are required to make yourself available for questioning. Detective Alvarez from Major Crimes will contact you tomorrow to arrange a formal interview. After the officers left, Vivian turned to Deacon, her expression a mixture of shock and growing suspicion. "What the hell was that?" she demanded. "Multiple women? A pattern?" Deacon ran a hand through his hair, visibly shaken. "It's Miles, Viv. He's trying to drive a wedge between us. Fabricating evidence. Pressuring my past relationships to make false statements." "Is any of it true?" Vivian pressed, the envelope from the police clutched tightly in her hand. "Have there been other women? Other divorces?" Deacon hesitated just a fraction too long before answering. "No, of course not." Vivian stared at him, really seeing him perhaps for the first time. The charming personal trainer with the too-perfect physique and the conveniently sympathetic ear. The man who had encouraged her dissatisfaction with Miles, who had suggested the possibility of a significant divorce settlement, who had guided her step by step through a plan that now lay in ruins. "You're lying," she said quietly. "The police officers were right, weren't they? This is your pattern. Find a wealthy, unhappy wife. Seduce her. Encourage her to seek divorce. Then what? Drain her accounts once she gets her settlement?" "Vivian, you're upset. You're not thinking clearly." "No," she cut him off. "For the first time in months, I am thinking clearly." She took a step back from him. "Miles was right about you. About us. This whole thing was a con from the beginning." Deacon's demeanor shifted suddenly, the desperate defensiveness replaced by a cold calculation that Vivian had never seen before. "Fine," he said, his voice hardening. "Yes, there were others. But what difference does it make now? We're in this together, Vivian. Miles has outmaneuvered us at every turn. Our only chance is to stick together and find a new angle." "Why?" Vivian challenged. "So you can move on to your next target once you've bled me dry? How much of my private account have you already transferred to yourself?" Deacon's silence was damning. "Get out," Vivian said, her voice trembling with rage. "Get your things and get out." "Don't be stupid," Deacon snapped. "You need me. The hearing is in 3 days. Without an attorney, without support." "I'll figure it out," Vivian interrupted. "But I want you gone. Now." For a moment, Deacon looked like he might argue further. Then his expression shifted again, a cold smile spreading across his face. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "But fine. Have it your way." He gathered his laptop and a small bag of essentials. At the door, he paused. "When Miles crushes you in court on Tuesday, don't come looking for me." After he left, Vivian sank onto the couch, the police envelope still clutched in her hand. Her mind was racing, reevaluating every moment of her relationship with Deacon in light of this new information. The attentive listener, the gradually increased physical training sessions, the first accidental touch that led to more, the sympathetic conversations about Miles' emotional distance. Had any of it been real? Or had she simply been another mark in a practice con? Her phone chimed with an incoming text. Unknown number. With a sense of foreboding, she opened the message. "Ms. Donovan, this is Floyd Newman. In light of recent developments, Mr. Donovan is willing to discuss settlement terms. If you're interested, please call my office to arrange a meeting. This offer expires at 5 p.m. tomorrow." Vivian stared at the message for a long time. Miles had known all along what Deacon was. Known that their relationship was built on manipulation and deceit. And now, with Deacon exposed and her attorney withdrawn, Miles was offering an olive branch. Or was it a trap? Another move in a game she was clearly losing? Vivian set down the phone without responding and opened the envelope from the police. Inside was indeed a formal notice of deposition, but also a second document that made her breath catch. It was a detailed financial analysis of her private account, the one she thought no one knew about. The analysis showed systematic transfers over the past 3 months. Small amounts moved regularly from her account to an offshore entity registered in Panama. More than $60,000 in total. Transfers she had never authorized. Transfers Deacon must have initiated using her account information. At the bottom of the page was a handwritten note in unfamiliar handwriting. Evidence secured from Deacon's laptop. Multiple similar patterns documented with previous victims. Consider your options carefully. Vivian's hands trembled as she set down the document. The full magnitude of her situation was becoming clear. She had been manipulated by Deacon. She had betrayed Miles. She had participated in a scheme to illegally seize property. And now she was alone, without legal representation, facing a divorce hearing in 3 days. For the first time since the confrontation at the mansion, Vivian Donovan began to cry, not from anger or frustration, but from the crushing realization of her own terrible mistakes. Chapter 9. The Resolution. The conference room at Newman & Associates was deliberately intimidating. All polished mahogany and leather chairs, with a sweeping view of Boston Harbor through floor-to-ceiling windows. Vivian sat alone on one side of the massive table, painfully aware of her faded jeans and simple blouse, the best she could manage from her rapidly dwindling wardrobe. Across from her sat Miles, impeccable in a tailored navy suit, flanked by Floyd Newman and a younger attorney she didn't recognize. Miles' expression was unreadable as he studied a document before him, seemingly in no hurry to acknowledge her presence despite the fact that she had been waiting for nearly 10 minutes. Finally, he looked up. His eyes held none of the warmth she remembered from their early years together, but neither did they contain the anger she had expected. Instead, there was something more disturbing, clinical detachment, as if she were a mildly interesting business problem to be solved. "Thank you for coming, Vivian," Miles said, his voice neutral. "I understand yesterday was difficult for you." Vivian straightened in her chair, determined to maintain her dignity despite everything. "You orchestrated all of this, didn't you? Finding Deacon's previous victims, getting my attorney to withdraw, even the police showing up exactly when they did." Miles didn't deny it. "I simply accelerated processes that would have happened eventually. Deacon Mercer, or Mercado, rather, has left a trail of victims across the country. It was only a matter of connecting them and providing the evidence to the appropriate authorities." "And my attorney?" Floyd Newman answered this question. "Mr. Osborne withdrew after learning of Mr. Mercer's criminal background and the potential implications for your case. It was his decision, made to protect his professional reputation." Vivian doubted that was the whole story, but she let it pass. "Why am I here, Miles? Your text said you wanted to discuss settlement terms." "Yes," Miles confirmed. "The divorce hearing is Monday. I see no reason to drag this out further." The younger attorney slid a document across the table to Vivian. "This is our proposed settlement agreement. I'd be happy to walk you through the key provisions." Vivian didn't touch the document. "I don't have an attorney anymore. I'm not signing anything without legal representation." "A prudent decision," Miles acknowledged. "We've arranged for independent counsel to review the agreement with you. Barbara Winters is waiting in the adjacent conference room. She's a respected family law attorney with no previous connection to me or my businesses." Vivian was surprised by this concession. "Why would you do that?" "Because I want this agreement to withstand any future challenge," Miles replied simply. "I have no interest in revisiting this matter once it's resolved." Vivian finally reached for the document, scanning the first page. The language was dense legal terminology, but the bottom-line figures caught her attention immediately. $3 million? She asked, looking up in surprise. "Plus the condo in South Beach." "Yes," Miles confirmed. "Paid in a lump sum upon finalization of the divorce, with the South Beach property transferred to your name within 30 days. Vivian was suspicious. After everything that had happened, the affair, the attempt to seize the house, the FCPA complaint, Miles was offering a settlement that appeared genuinely generous. "What's the catch?" she asked bluntly. Miles almost smiled. "Several, actually. The agreement includes a strict confidentiality clause regarding our marriage and divorce. Any violation results in forfeiture of the entire settlement amount. There's also a non-disparagement provision that prevents you from making any negative statements about me or my businesses to the media or through social media." "That's standard," Vivian noted. "There must be more." "There is," Miles admitted. "The agreement requires your full cooperation with authorities in their investigation of Deacon Mercer's activities. You'll need to provide complete and truthful testimony regarding his methods and actions." "You want me to help you destroy him?" Vivian said flatly. I want you to help his victims seek justice, Miles corrected, including yourself. Vivian was quiet for a moment, absorbing the implications. And if I refuse? If I decide to fight this in court? Floyd Newman cleared his throat. Ms. Donovan, I believe you should discuss that scenario with independent counsel. But I can tell you that we have substantial evidence regarding your participation in Mr. Mercer's scheme, including recorded conversations planning the takeover of the house and the fraudulent presentation of ownership documents to Bastion Security. You were surveilling me in our home, Vivian said, anger flaring. Yes, Miles acknowledged without apology. After finding evidence of your affair and overhearing a phone conversation that suggested you were planning something more than just a divorce. The surveillance was legal and will be admissible in court. Vivian felt cornered, yet the settlement offer was far more generous than she had expected given the circumstances. Why offer me anything at all? You could crush me in court. We both know it. For the first time, Miles' composure slipped slightly, a flash of genuine emotion crossing his face. Because despite everything, we were married for 6 years. Whatever we became, there was something real at the beginning. The unexpected sentiment caught Vivian off guard. Before she could respond, Miles continued, his business demeanor returning. Additionally, prolonged legal proceedings benefit neither of us. This settlement allows us both to move forward without the distraction and public spectacle of a contentious divorce trial. Vivian looked down at the settlement document again. $3 million was a fraction of Miles' true wealth, but it was still substantial, enough to maintain a comfortable lifestyle indefinitely if managed properly. The South Beach condo was worth at least another $2 million in the current market. What about the house? My personal belongings? Your personal effects have been packed and placed in storage, Floyd explained. Upon signing this agreement, you'll receive access to retrieve them. As for the house is not negotiable, Miles interrupted firmly. It was never a marital asset, and it remains mine. Vivian nodded, not surprised. The house had emotional significance for Miles that went beyond its considerable monetary value. It represented the empire he had built, the security he had created for himself. I'd like to speak with this independent attorney now, Vivian decided, before I make any decisions. Of course, Floyd agreed, standing. I'll escort you to her. As Vivian rose to follow Floyd, Miles spoke again, his voice quiet but clear. One more thing, Vivian, this offer is final. There will be no negotiation, no counterproposals. You accept these terms, or we proceed to court on Monday. Vivian paused, meeting his gaze directly. You planned all of this from the beginning, didn't you? From the moment you suspected the affair, you've been orchestrating every move, every reveal, every consequence. Like one of your business strategies. Miles didn't confirm or deny it, but his expression told her everything she needed to know. Goodbye, Miles, she said softly and followed Floyd from the room. 2 hours later, Vivian returned to the main conference room. Barbara Winters, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense demeanor, accompanied her. The attorney had thoroughly reviewed the settlement agreement, explaining each provision in detail and openly acknowledging both its generous aspects and its restrictive covenants. My client has made her decision, Barbara announced as they took their seats. Miles and Floyd looked expectantly at Vivian. I accept the terms, Vivian said simply, with one request. The terms are non-negotiable, Miles reminded her. I'm not asking for more money or assets, Vivian clarified. I want 5 minutes alone with you before I sign. Just to talk. Miles considered this for a moment, then nodded. 5 minutes. After everyone else had left the room, Vivian and Miles sat in silence for a moment, the settlement agreement between them on the table. Why did you marry me? Vivian finally asked. You're thorough, methodical. You must have vetted me before proposing. Did you know about my first marriage? The pattern even then? Miles studied her thoughtfully. I knew your first marriage ended badly. That your ex-husband claimed you married him for his money, though he had considerably less than I do. I didn't see a pattern. I saw a beautiful, intelligent woman who challenged me in ways no one else had. So I genuinely fooled you, Vivian said, with no satisfaction in her voice. Perhaps we fooled each other, Miles suggested. You saw the successful businessman, the lifestyle, the security. I saw the woman I wanted you to be, not who you actually were. Vivian couldn't argue with that assessment. When did you first suspect? About Deacon and me? March, Miles answered. You received a text while we were having dinner. Your expression changed just for a moment, a look I'd never seen before. You said it was your sister, but you angled the phone away as you replied. It seemed insignificant, but it registered. All the way back in March, Vivian marveled. And you never said anything. Just watched and waited. I needed to understand what I was dealing with, Miles explained. At first, I thought it was just an affair. Painful, but not uncommon. When I realized it was something more orchestrated, I adjusted my approach accordingly. Vivian nodded slowly. You know, he was using me too. The police were right. It was his pattern. Find a wealthy, unhappy wife, manipulate her into a divorce, then gradually siphon off her settlement. She laughed bitterly. I thought I was so clever. We all have blind spots, Miles said, without mockery. Mine was believing that the prenuptial agreement was unnecessary because what we had was different. Would a prenup have changed anything? Vivian asked. The house still would have been protected by your trust structure. True, Miles acknowledged. But it would have clearly defined expectations from the beginning. Perhaps that clarity would have prevented all of this. Vivian reached for the settlement agreement and pulled it toward her. I'm sorry, Miles. Not for getting caught, but for who I became. I don't expect you to believe that or care. But I wanted to say it. Miles watched as she picked up the pen. What will you do now? After the divorce is finalized? Start over, Vivian said simply. Somewhere new. Away from Boston. Away from. She gestured vaguely, encompassing everything around them. Away from all of this. And Deacon, Vivian's expression hardened. I'll testify. Everything I know, everything we planned. He deserves whatever consequences come his way. Good, Miles nodded, satisfied. Vivian signed all 3 copies of the agreement. Her signature steady despite the finality of the moment. One last question. The offshore restructuring you initiated when all this began, was that real or just another pressure tactic? Miles smiled slightly. What do you think? I think you move enough assets to make the threat credible, but not the entire empire. You're too careful to trigger that level of regulatory scrutiny unless absolutely necessary. Very perceptive, Miles acknowledged. You would have made an excellent business partner in another life. Vivian stood, gathering her purse. Goodbye, Miles. I'd say I wish you well, but I think we're beyond such pleasantries. Actually, Miles replied, rising as well. I do wish you well, Vivian. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to bitterness serves no purpose. I've built my life around protecting what's mine. I've succeeded in that. What you do with your future is your own concern. As Vivian reached the door, Miles spoke one final time. Just remember the terms of our agreement. Complete confidentiality. No public statements. No media interviews. Your cooperation with authorities regarding Deacon. Any violation. I know, Vivian interrupted. I forfeit everything. She turned to face him one last time. Don't worry, Miles. I've learned my lesson about underestimating you. I won't make that mistake again. After she left, Floyd returned to the conference room. That went more smoothly than expected, he observed, collecting the signed agreements. She's pragmatic, Miles replied. She recognized her position and made the rational choice. And Mercer? The investigation is proceeding. Miles nodded. Multiple jurisdictions now. The evidence we provided has opened several previously closed cases. He'll face charges in at least 3 states. Consequences, Floyd noted. As you said from the beginning. Yes, Miles agreed. Actions have consequences. Vivian's affair cost her our marriage and most of the financial security she coveted. Her participation in Deacon's scheme cost her any moral standing in the divorce. And Deacon's pattern of predatory behavior will finally cost him his freedom. And for you, Floyd asked, what consequences do you face from all this? Miles was silent for a moment, looking out the Boston skyline where the afternoon sun glinted off the harbor waters. I trusted unwisely, he said finally. The consequence is that I won't make that mistake again. He turned back to Floyd, his expression resolute. Now, let's get back to business. The Singapore development won't manage itself. As they gathered their materials to leave, Floyd observed his client with a mixture of admiration and concern. Miles had navigated the entire crisis with the same methodical precision he applied to his business dealings. He had identified the threat, developed a multi-layered strategy to neutralize it, and executed that strategy flawlessly. Yet something fundamental had changed. The Miles Donovan who had fallen in love with Vivian 6 years ago, the man who had been willing to forego a prenuptial agreement because he believed in the relationship, was gone. In his place stood someone even more formidable, someone who had eliminated what might have been his last vulnerability. Miles caught Floyd watching him and raised an eyebrow inquiringly. "Just thinking," Floyd said, "that you've handled this situation remarkably well." "I simply applied the principle my father taught me," Miles replied. "Never put anything in your own name if you want to keep it, including your trust." With that, he closed his briefcase and strode from the room, already focused on the next challenge, the next opportunity, the next victory. Behind him, in his perfectly ordered wake, lay the ruins of Vivian's schemes and Deacon's manipulations, a testament to the consequences of betraying a man who had built an empire specifically designed to be unassailable. A man who never forgot and never forgave. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.